Good morning, traders, and a happy Thursday out there to everyone. Hope that y'all had a good evening there. Obviously, plenty of action there in the markets unfolding, right? Yesterday at the close, and then even into the overnight session. But with that said, as far as our data points go this morning, just to be aware of as far as our 8:30 points go, just to add into the mix there, we have unemployment claims and Philly Fed manufacturing index. Those will be due out at 8:30 Eastern, and then at 9:15, respectively. There we have industrial production. So a few items there on the board, but main items there will be these 8:30 figures there, and then a couple speakers later on in the day. So we'll take those into account. But with that said, as we will know, S&P is getting their full test up yesterday, making their new high, so nothing to fault on that behalf. And then we also have our extended run alive and well at this stage, meaning our consecutive closes on one side of our daily 5 SMA. Our set of 3, 6, 7, 8, 9, and then yesterday being day 10 closes on one side. And we had our nice advancement, so we've at least been able to trade above the previous day's high overnight. And we do have the upper Keltner channel boundary up in this area here. Comes in at 53.51. Nothing too overly significant about that zone. That would just be reaching towards the upper boundary there, getting nice and stretched away from its 20 period EMA on the daily displays. So slightly above the previous day's high, which will also be good to have on the sheets there, 53.37 and a quarter being the previous day's high there for the S&Ps. And since we did have good trendiness yesterday, right, we could always consider any type of Z-Day activity there in the early morning session, meaning, consolidation from yesterday's good trendiness, right? Oftentimes you'll see trades on both sides of the opening price. And what we'll also want to keep an eye out for is this 15-minute moving average on that pit session display. Right, currently, from where we closed yesterday, that comes in at 53.19. So it will rapidly rise, right? If we opened up in this area, right, we could be leaving a small gap, but just some items to consider there as we, get closer towards our opening. But with that said, good advancement, keeping itself on the extended run. And we'll keep an eye, see how they want to handle themselves into the opening. And even though we took it out yesterday, the previous high test should still be of good value for us there in the S&Ps, meaning that 33.50 that we were able to take out yesterday. So fairly maintaining their markup fairly well. No real signs of concern in terms of loss of momentum or divergences. If we come in here to the hourly displays, we could see overnight started to do some, prolonged consolidation. So on these hourly displays, you can see we're working on just forming a bit of a flag or continuation pattern. So I think that should serve us well there in the S&Ps. We'll take a quick look over here to the DAX side of the spectrum here as well. DAX we just know is maintaining its previous high test as well, the 18,839. So we've been defending it over these past couple days, and as well on the hourly charts, very mild, right? A little different than the S&Ps that have had a little bit more of a rounded consolidation. The DAX is a little bit of a deeper pullback, if you would, but still really, doing a fine job. We're still holding above that previous day's low, so just to have that one on the sheets there in the case of the DAX, that's 18,855 there, where the previous day's low comes in, so holding pretty well with respect to that for the time being. And then moving on along outside of our index future group, we have that of the euro currency here. Open this up just a notch more. It as well, right? Had good trendiness during yesterday's trading there. So another one where we can monitor for any type of brief consolidation. Right, starting with the daily charts, and we know we had our nice extension bar, right? Not quite on the persistency of trend like our S&Ps and some of our other groups, but what we were able to do is finally get above the impulse bar to the downside that we had from April 10th. So that's synonymous with filling in a lot of these areas here on the intraday time frames. We didn't quite get on the other side of 1.09160, so on that data point still remains looming. And just as how we have with some of our other groups here, even though we're not on the extended run, any retracement closer towards this daily 5 SMA, first touch of that oftentimes would be met with a little bit of buying activity. if we get down there to touch that point. Right? In hourly charts, we're pulling back to the hourly moving average there. Okay, make this nice and concise there and quick, I guess. Here we have the gold. The gold came out of balance yesterday, the 3-bar balance mode. We had range expansion to the upside out of that, inside range bar. So we know the odds favor a test of that high in the following day. So we were able to look above the 2396.1. So that part of the equation is already fulfilled in the case of the gold. Note where we would be drifting back towards, right? 120-minute moving average ties in fairly close with the high that we were able to look above yesterday, 2385.3. In the case of the gold, should be an important area of interest there for us. Okay, and then here, since mentioning the bonds there, we'll bring over these bonds. Right, we also are going over these in pretty good detail there yesterday, right, giving ourselves a nice range expansion bar. Speaking of upper Keltner channels like our S&Ps, good to know we'd be looking at 119.07 here in the case of the bonds, the upper Keltner channel. Outside up bar to begin with, right? Better range expansion yesterday, so making good follow through. However, here with the bonds, what we would be coming up towards, a little bit underneath that upper Keltner channel on the daily, but in terms of good reference points here, you do have 118.26, which if we look over here on the left hand side, we just want to note that we did have broader selling pressure into that zone. So if we pull this over to the far right hand side, it's just going to be a little bit of a hurdle that we'd be running into there, but certainly nice signs of momentum coming into the group. If we come over here and look at the shorter end of the curve with the 10s, we can very much note similar activity here. They were a little bit behind schedule, right? The 30s had showcased a little bit more underlying strength, but the similar area here for the 10s would come in closer towards like 110.06, referencing over there on that far left-hand side as far as when we were originally coming to the downside, right? Our broader channeling action. So nice advancement for them. Here's what the 10s look like just to compare up against that intraday. You can see not quite as zippy for them, but similar in terms of like the 2 days of low to high following the outside up bar. So not too shabby there for them. Certainly ones that we'd want to keep tabs on. But as we can see, the gold, the euro currency, those 120-minute and hourly charts coming into the session today should serve fairly well. And then we have the crude here. This is going to be basis the July series there. As Linda mentioned, the CQG rolled, and we have the volume just about equal in both of the series there. So that should be fully rolled by tomorrow. But for our purposes here, we will also look at that July series just to kind of get ourselves, ready for that, if you would. So as we know, the crude yesterday also, this is kind of second round of giving this bit of a test reject feeling. So not quite, coming out of balance. We did make a slightly lower low, which we'll look at in a little bit more detail in a moment. But what we do have is a hint of price bar overlap in this area. We know we've come down in a two-part wave, viewing this on the bigger structure as being the A, B, C rhythm, or just a two-part wave. So we've done all right in terms of footing. What we're going to see here on the intraday charts is that we've been struggling a notch putting in any type of like major higher highs. So we could dissect this here. As we know, right, we had our nice swing down, a little bit of balancing act at the bottom. But what we want to kind of latch onto here or note are these little blue boxes are just indicating the cycle highs that we've been having in the crude. So, we had our one lower high, we came down, tested our lows, made a lower low. So into this area here with this crude, this more recent blue boxes zone, if we would call it there, the top of that is going to be a bit of a hurdle there for us. In other words, if we don't quite get on the other side of that, we can keep up with the theme of putting in slightly lower high cycles. Otherwise, if we are able to get some acceptance on the other side of 78.68 basis, the July series, that could start to change the tone. We do a little better job of working on a broader balancing act. But either those 120-minute or hourly charts, I just think that, like the way that these little retests show up in the data. We had our slightly lower here. This one was slightly higher, but point being that these broader price bar overlap areas should be of good interest there for that of the crude. So we'll shrink that one back down. I think we got a little musical charts here. We do have the 830 figures that we'll want to take into account. I'm just going to put our daily chart over here on the left hand side. We'll get a couple of these other items adjusted and lined back up. And then hey, we're going to be right on our merry way coming into this nice US morning session here. So points of interest, we'll get this back to yeah, we'll just get this back to the S&Ps for now. Really, we're just kind of latched on to the high test for them, so I haven't really departed too much from that overnight. But again, as we get closer towards that opening, we'll see if we get any trades on both sides of that opening price. Excuse me. One moment. Sorry about that. And then after we set the stage for the first hour's range, the first hour's high and low, respectively, when we come up to those points, I want to watch the market in a little bit more detail, see if we meet that with any type of fading activity. And then lastly, that 15-minute pit session moving average to consider there after we get to our opening, since we still have a little bit of time until we get to that point there. But that's what we're working with. We do have another round of data points coming up here in just about 3 minutes. I don't think they're as substantial as what we had there in the past couple days, but still good to be aware of. So let that settle in, and we're going to have ourselves a nice Thursday coming up in front of us here. So I'll let that get out of the way, and we'll be rocking and rolling.